High tech, low tech, or no tech. Through our hobbies and our passions, the geek comes out in us all.
The world's of geekdom.
I am a geek and I'm proud of it.
Geeks.
Geeks unite.
Well, let's get those nerds! Nerds! No!
Did you just call me a nerd?
Not all geeks are nerds.
Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What do we wait for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator, as always, reminding you that if you're not in Houston, or you are in Houston but just not awake when my show airs here on KPRC 950 AM, the best way to get the show is to subscribe to the podcast. You can either stream it or download each episode. That's something I do for you. You can take it with you wherever you go. Just type into your favorite podcast player, client, app, whatever it is, Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hamburger, and it should show up. I recommend the iHeartRadio app, of course. Spreaker's great. I use Pocket Casts on my Android. I think you can get it on Podbean. iTunes for sure. You can just click on your iPhone or iPad, the podcast app right there. It's just called Podcast. And then you type in Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hamburger and subscribe to that podcast. There's another network called Geek Therapy that I am not associated with at all. That's not me. So when you're subscribing, make sure it says Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hamburger. If you like the Geek Therapy Network, of course, the people I'm not associated with, by all means, subscribe to them. Free plug for them. Anyways, I am going to jump right into it this week. I am going to stick my neck out. I am going to stick my neck out regarding this American woman who shot the giraffe in South Africa situation. On this show, I say we are all geeks about something, which is very true. We are all geeks about something, which means some of us, a lot of us, are geeks about hunting. I am personally not a geek about hunting. I do not morally object to hunting. I do morally object to wasting an animal, to shooting a deer, for instance, mounting the head and tossing away the rest of the animal. Not many hunters do that. That's just not many hunters do that, okay? There's a lot of good meat in a deer. What's a deer weigh? 400 pounds, 500 something like that. I don't know. I'm not a hunter. I'm just saying there's a lot of good meat there. So while I am not morally against hunting, as long as you use all of the animal and you are grateful for the animal and you give thanks for the animal, I'm not against that. I am against wasting animals in the way that Americans did. I'm not going to say we, because I was not alive at this time. None of us were. But the way Americans expanded west, and one of the ways we dealt with Native Americans was to kill their food supply, which was buffalo or bison. And the way we did that, I'm sorry, not we. I wasn't there. We weren't there. You weren't there. Not even your granddaddy was there. But the way they did that was to just destroy the animal. They wasted all of the buffalo. They just shot it or whatever they did, ran it off a cliff, and just let the meat rot. I am morally against wasting the resources from the hunt. That said, this giraffe situation, and I need you guys to listen to my complete opinion here before you stop the video if you're watching on YouTube and comment below about it. You need to hear me out here, because this is another touchy subject, because a lot of us are geeks about animals. We love animals. A lot of us, I was going to say unfortunately, but yeah, unfortunately, love animals more than we love humans. Let me stare right into the camera here if you're on YouTube. It's unfortunate that we don't love each other as much as we love animals. That's what I'm saying. It's not unfortunate to love animals. That is a virtuous, wonderful, beautiful thing to have in your heart. Caring for those that can't care for themselves. Caring for animals and cats and dogs and squirrels and everything. That's such a beautiful thing. I just wish humanity cared about humanity even half as much as we care about animals. So back to, it is one reason I started this whole show, is to hopefully get people to relate to each other more. I always say, liberal, conservative, we all love Star Wars and Legos. That's what my show is all about. But back to this, the lady shooting the giraffe. I'm not going to give her name. I'm not going to give any names. I'm just going to tell you the defense I've heard for it, the defense I've read for it. The defense was that it costs $2,000 or $3,000 or so per giraffe if you're going to hunt a giraffe, a sanctioned giraffe, a giraffe that is okay to hunt, not poaching, but a sanctioned hunt. And in this case, I'm just telling you what I've read, telling you what I've heard and what I've read about this case and what I seem to know about it. Do your own research. But apparently, the $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 that it costs to shoot a sanctioned giraffe, that money goes back towards conservation efforts. And the only reason that this giraffe was okayed to be hunted, and I use hunted in quotes because shooting something that's literally the size of the side of a barn, I don't really think that's hunting. Anyways, the money from that sanctioned hunt goes back to conservation efforts. And to begin with, this type of conservation is called game management conservation. So they were managing the game in this case because this was a very old, infertile bull giraffe that had killed 3 young fertile males and was thereby inhibiting the ability for the giraffes to breed. This old male, infertile male, was killing young bucks literally, which means that new giraffes couldn't be born. I'm just saying, this is why they sanctioned this for the hunt. This is why they let the woman shoot the animal. I don't think the woman did herself any favors by pointing to the sky like she just got a touchdown. And it looked really dumb for her to point to the sky like she just scored a touchdown because, you know what? How much skill, honestly, how much skill did it take to shoot something that was, like I said, literally the size of the side of a barn? So that little, it was very bad taste for this woman to do that little victory dance after shooting such a big animal. Now, also apparently after shooting the giraffe meat wasn't wasted. I haven't seen any evidence of this. This is just the woman's claim. This is just the conservationists organization's claim. I haven't seen any evidence of this, but they say that all the meat from the giraffe went to feed a village of 200 or 300 people, supposedly. I have no reason to believe that it didn't. I have no reason to believe that they didn't use all of the animal. So I'm kind of on the crossroads about this. If the animal was causing a problem and it really was inhibiting the population growth of an endangered species, that's one thing. Again, hear me out here. Please, for the love of God, hear me out here. That at least introduces a moral gray area. Maybe this woman and maybe this company that sanctioned this hunt isn't the murderous band of barbarian Neanderthals as they've been made out to be in some publications. I'm not justifying what they did. I'm not justifying what they did because, hear me out. Okay, taking out an old infertile bull giraffe because it's killed 3 young bucks and therefore fertile young bucks and therefore is inhibiting the population growth of these giraffes. Okay. Here's my rub with it. Here's why you should have watched this entire video or listened to my entire segment here. You didn't have to kill the giraffe. You didn't have to kill it. All you needed to do was isolate it from the rest of the herd. Put it in a zoo somewhere or something. Learn from it somehow. That's my rub with this. Even though there's moral gray area to all the parameters of this specific hunt, for me, it boils down to the fact that you didn't have to kill it. I am not an activist. I don't cry when I see, a deer get shot. I think I can't do it myself. I never want to be the one to shoot a deer. And I would never high-five my buddy if I did shoot a deer. I don't want to do that. I don't want to cause suffering to animals. I don't want to take the life of an animal. I was talking about feral hogs earlier. We have a feral hog problem here in Texas. I don't want to be the one to shoot the hog. I don't want to do that. But that's my heart. I don't want to hurt animals. So it's just my argument that you didn't have to kill this giraffe. You could have just moved it, separated it from the herd. I haven't heard anybody bring up that point. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it read. Not even in the comments saying that we should murder this lady, basically, putting her details out on the internet for people to go pay her a visit and give them a piece of their mind, or worse, which is really stupid and really barbaric and doesn't make you any friggin' better than the person you think you're attacking. But I have not read any of those, even animal conservationists. I'm not saying they haven't been saying it. I'm just saying I haven't come across it yet. Anyone say, remove the animal from the herd. You didn't have to kill it. That's where I stand on it. You didn't have to kill the giraffe. And whether or not it's justified, and it's like again, like I said, if it's just moral gray area at best, what it all boils down to is you didn't have to kill it. I have nothing against hunting, like I just spent the last 10 minutes saying. Nothing against hunting. Some of us are geeks about hunting. I like hunters. Hunters actually do so much for conservation. You have no friggin' idea. Animal rights activists, if they would take, I'm just saying that the ones that are just way overboard with it, if they took 5 minutes to research how much conservationism goes on with hunters and groups of hunters and organizations. They do so much for the environment. They do so much for animals in general. I know it sounds counterintuitive because they shoot a deer or whatever. They do so much for animal conservation if you just spent 5 minutes looking into it. Still, this giraffe, I feel you didn't have to kill it. Just remove it from the herd. Oh, it's killing all these young bucks. It's killing all the fertile young bucks, and they can't breed anymore. It's actually causing harm to the growth of the giraffe population. Well, great. Move it. Take it out of the equation. Just move it from right here to over yonder, as my 101-year-old great-grandmother used to say. Hither and thither, over yonder and stuff. Just move that giraffe over yonder. I mean, like, that's just what I feel about it. I love hunters, and I have no problem eating meat. Hunters do good in our society. They really do. If you look into it for 5 minutes, I'm not saying all hunters. Animal activists also do good in our society. I'm not saying all animal activists. There are bad eggs in every group of people. Every single group of people. You're going to have some bad eggs giving a bad name to that group. Should have just moved the giraffe. Should have just taken the giraffe out of the herd. You didn't have to kill it. Regardless of whether it's sanctioned or not. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Stick around. There's more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. I'm Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator. Subscribe to the podcast, Geek Therapy Radio. I talked about giraffes and hunting this time, but usually I'm talking about computers and games and airplanes and cars and all sorts of facets of geekdom, all sorts of things. So just go subscribe to the podcast, look through all the titles of it, and see what you want to hear about. See what you might want to learn about, discuss. This is an open forum. Maybe somebody watching on YouTube right now knows way more details about this than I do. Thank you. Please put it below. Enlighten us. This is what the community is about. This is what my show is about. Thank you for your contribution. If I'm wrong on something, tell me that I'm wrong on something. With facts, preferably. With links. with sources, I welcome it because we're trying to share information. There's no point in cutting each other down. There's no point in saying, hey, stupid, this thing. Not necessary. I mean, you can do it if you want to, but it's not necessary. It serves no purpose. Just give us your information. Enlighten us. That's what this is all about. Like I said, more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. I'm Johnny Hemberger. Stick around. If you're listening on the radio, just a couple minutes of commercials. If you're listening to the podcast, it's instant. And if you're watching on YouTube, this is probably a self-contained video. So I will see everybody in just a moment.
It's gonna take a lot to drag me away from you. There's nothing that 100 men or more could ever do. My best race down in Africa. Gonna take some time to do the things we never had. Oh yeah.
Who among us doesn't love great beer, amazing food, and arcade games? That's why I'm stoked beyond geek belief to tell you about Kung Fu Saloon, located at 5317 Washington Avenue, right here in Houston. Kung Fu Saloon on Washington Avenue has the geek trinity covered, and then some. Of course, they have the most excellent beer on tap, the nomiest food off the grill, and the vintage arcade games we love. But you can also get your tay-tay on with karaoke, your super fan on with televised sports, and your rug cut to the best music and DJs on Washington Avenue. In addition to arcade games, get your competitive fix with Giant Jenga, Giant Connect 4, 3 skee-ball lanes, shuffleboard, and foosball. Get your drink, food, game, karaoke, and dance on. Or step to Street Fighter 2 with me and get your geek fanny served. Hadouken! Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Visit www.kungfusaloonhouston.com for more details and dress code info. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm still your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. And I've got a special guest today because what is Geek Therapy Radio and what is nerd culture without community? You've heard me preaching on it so much ad nauseum in the show. That's what it's all about. Like I've said, I draw a circle in the sand in this oasis of geekdom amid all the politics on the radio. There's plenty of that, which is fine. If that's your thing, there's plenty of it. But if you need a little escape, I say that whether you're liberal or conservative, we all love Star Wars and Legos. So instead of drawing a line in the sand, Democrats this side, Republicans this side, liberal this side, conservative this side, circle. Let's come together. Let's build something. Let's play with remote control cars. Let's play video games. Let's hear somebody talk about their passion of calligraphy or whatever you're into, whatever your geek thing is, cars, anything. And in that note, in that spirit of camaraderie, I have someone who might be a bigger geek than me. I don't know. Possibly. His name is Chris Little. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I just want to touch on you saying, we all.
You want to touch me?
No. just what you said earlier. We all enjoy Legos. We all enjoy Star Wars. I've never seen Star Wars, so I couldn't tell you.
Have you? Oh my dear Lord. That's great. You know what? Here's the thing. And any geek listening, I think for the most part, what we feel when we say, and again, I'm not huge into Star Wars, but let's use Star Wars for example. When someone says, I've never seen Star Wars, our immediate reaction really isn't, you're so stupid, you haven't seen Star Wars. I envy you for never seeing Star Wars. I envy you that you haven't had that world exposed to you yet. It's like someone saying, I've never seen one episode of South Park. Oh, dude. Holy crap. Like, I envy that. I've never seen Breaking Bad. Oh, good Lord.
Breaking Bad's a good show.
The magic you are, like, the thrill ride you're about to go on. So when someone says, I've never seen Star Wars, that's, first of all, you're a unicorn. Everyone's seen Star Wars. But
well, I've seen Spaceballs, which, okay, while technically not Star Wars, the best Star Wars in the non-franchise.
That is arguable, and I'm sure plenty of people would agree with you. I've only seen Spaceballs once.
Oh, I love anything that Mel Brooks touched. Yeah. It's amazing.
Robin Hood Men in Tights, Blazing Saddles. By the way, Blazing Saddles, they could never, ever do that today.
Oh God, no. Well, they couldn't do the producers because the whole, like, we need to make a big Hollywood flop. was Hitler on ice.
Yeah.
That's not something you could do.
No. So, geeks, to reiterate, if there's someone out there who hasn't experienced a certain facet of geek culture, let's say I had a guest on recently who knits. Brooklyn Boy Knits, who I'm going to have back on the show because I was only able to give him a couple minutes the first time I had him on. I'm going to give him way more time than that because his story is amazing and what he's doing there in New York City is amazing. So I need to have him on for more time. But when someone says you're into knitting or talks about knitting at all, they think of, an old lady sitting there knitting some socks for her grandson.
That's exactly what I thought of.
Who's 25 years old and she still thinks he's 2 or whatever. He doesn't know, so he knits some little booties, which is really cute. But Chris, before we got on the air, I don't mean to keep talking so much, but that's what I do.
No, it's fine.
We were talking about, well, you came in and I was taking a computer apart. I've got a computer that's for sale and I was gutting it. And we started talking about Linux and Steam drives and stuff like that. And you were saying what you're saying, you said your Steam drive was recognized by one system but wasn't recognized by the other operating system.
Yeah, so what I have is I have a 2 terabyte system. 1 terabyte is for Windows, the other terabyte is for Linux.
2 separate drives.
2 separate drives.
Not partitioned.
I tried the
drives.
partitioning thing. It's basically the same system.
Right.
But you actually have 2 physical disks, well, multiple in a stack. But they're spinning independently. The needles read the drive separately. So I think having 2 independent drives is better.
It's better. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so that's what I have. Now, my Windows operating system doesn't see my Linux drive at all.
I remember back in the day, which was 1997, I want to say. We were sitting in computer lab back in the day. We had computer lab where you had to learn typing and all that kind of stuff.
I still had to do that.
And we were using computers. Oh my gosh, this is going to be blast from the past for so many listeners. There was a button on the computer called turbo, and you could press the turbo button and get an extra 33 megahertz out of the Pentium 2 or whatever. The Pentium, sorry.
I heard about turbo buttons, and I've seen them occasionally, usually on the computers that require the key to turn it on.
Holy crap. Yeah, the keys.
I
Man.
don't understand the purpose of the key or how a turbo works. I just know that they exist in some magical far off, some distant past.
The key was just for was old school security reason. Now we have Kensington locks and things like that. So the key was your manager would have the key, and to turn on the computer, he would stick the key into the computer, turn the thing, and then you'd be able to turn it on. The turbo button, we more or less have it today. It's overclocking. Well, it's idiot proof overclock.
That's what I figured, but because if you get any kind of Intel, or if you're like me, AMD processor, it has this is its turbo, its boosted speed that will automatically clock it up to
out of the box.
Yeah, out of the box, we'll clock it up to this if your thermals are looking okay.
Right.
And once it hits that, we'll back it back down.
Thermal throttle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why it wasn't automatic before. I mean,
because it was hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
But it doesn't make any sense.
When you hit the button, I think what happened, and again, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a programmer. I don't know exactly, but basically, when you hit that button, it was sending more voltage to the CPU and probably ramping up the fans faster.
Right.
It wasn't a supreme. I'll take that back a little bit. I was going to say it wasn't a supreme overclock, but you think at percentage, if you get a 10% overclock on whatever modern chip, that's pretty good. You can get better than that, but if you get 10%, that's pretty good.
I think I got mine up to an extra 0.7 gigahertz on my chip.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's 700. That's 700 extra megahertz. That's noticeable.
Yeah.
That's noticeable.
It's fantastic.
So that's whatever percentage of, let's say it's 3 gigahertz going to 3.7. What percentage is that? I'm not going to do math right here, but I'm going to say it's not as great as a percentage as going from 100 megahertz to 133 megahertz.
Very true.
That's a 33%. Just press the button, press the precious button, and you have a 33% overclock.
But to me, what doesn't make sense, and why is it not automatic, is because you still had temperature sensors, right?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, well, if your temperature sensor says, hey, this is going too hot. Let's back off the voltage a little bit.
No, we just YOLO'd it.
Why didn't it do it automatically? Because if you press the turbo button and leave it all the time, like I probably would,
Yeah.
like you'd burn up your Pentium.
You just had to, with great power comes great responsibility, and you just have to. Okay, I'm gonna run Doom for 30 minutes in turbo boost. All I was getting at with that story of back in the day, I remember sitting in a computer lab with a Pentium computer that had the turbo boost button on it. Was I used Mavis Beacon typing like trainer or whatever.
You used a what?
It's called Mavis Beacon. It was this lady, an African American lady on the box, and she teaches you how to type. And apparently it was way before PCs or anything like that. It was just type. I don't know where Mavis Beacon came from. That's not the point. The point is it's called Mavis Beacon. Mavis Beacon teaches typing or whatever. And I forget, I was in sixth grade, I think. And I sat there and looking at the box in the middle of the class. I just go, remember, I'm like 12 years old.
No.
I'm looking at the box or the loading screen with Mavis Beacon on there, and I just go out loud. I was like, Mavis Beacon has nice legs.
12 years old, you didn't know any better.
12 years old. I mean, I knew what I knew, but you're right. I didn't know any better not to. I think I knew I was being silly.
At 12 years old, it's like that's an attractive person. You're commenting.
When you're 12 years old, like what you think is it's all over the place.
Oh yeah.
What you think is attractive, and I remember not getting in too much trouble for that. Like I thought I was going to say that, and people were going to.
What is the teacher going to do?
This is private school, by the way. Like this was a disciplinary school, and she's just like, Johnny, that's inappropriate. Like, okay.
Guess I won't be making those comments anymore.
So we'll wrap this segment up, but I'm gonna throw a game out there that, even though you're 22, you may still have heard of, and you may still have played, maybe in an emulator or in DOS or something like that, if you still go to DOS. Sometimes I go to DOS just to type out commands and feel OG, like I was using Windows 3.1 in 1992.
Well, I mean, if you like DOS to feel OG, just get Linux, because you're going to be spending a lot of time in terminal.
In the command prompt, right.
Don't let that dissuade you. It's easy, and I mean, the communities are very active, and they'll help you, but they'll want you to know generally kind of how to figure that out. 10-minute tutorials on YouTube will teach you how to use it.
I need to get into Linux just so that I can be familiar with it. So when someone says, "Hey, have you done this?" and
Mint is probably the easiest to transition to from Windows into Linux. I go with Ubuntu, and a lot. I was
going to say Ubuntu is what I hear most of all.
A lot of people are probably going to tell me I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I don't care what you think.
Ubuntu? What? What are the different? I say Asus. And everyone else says Asus.
Yeah, I say Asus.
Asus.
But I mean,
because I didn't know how.
What you're talking about.
Because I didn't. But when I saw Asus, it was before a lot of YouTube and stuff like that, where you heard people pronouncing it right. Back in the day, you just walk into Circuit City or something, and you see ASUS for like a motherboard.
Well,
and
let's see.
You didn't know how to pronounce it. Yeah, so I was like, well, phonetically, using my American English, that's Asus.
Yeah.
Or Ace, that's maybe, and obviously it's not. Obviously you pronounce it Asus.
Yeah.
But before now, I didn't know that. Obviously back then I didn't know, because I just saw the words on the box, ASUS, and then whatever the serial number for the board is, whatever the model number. It's like, I'm just gonna get the Asus whatever for my Pentium 4. Man, hyperthreading when it came out. I'm getting. We could talk like that for a long time.
Yeah, you were trying to say a game.
Linux Mint. Yeah. Okay.
We got
sidetracked. So.
Oh yeah.
The game I'm talking about. Oh, this is gonna blast so many listeners' minds. Number crunchers.
I played number
and
crunchers.
Word crunchers. The troglodytes that would come out and try to munch you. You're on this grid, and you're like, "What's 3 + 4?" And you try to like munch the correct numbers and munch the correct words, like the correct spellings of words. Find the word bird, and you like go munch on bird. Munch on bird. That sounds really dirty. But that was the game, and it was amazing. In my computer lab, and this is such a long segment. My computer lab, first grade, we were using Apple IIe's, not even C's. Some of them were C's, some of them were colors, but 8-bit. And that's where I fell in love with computing, and I still have a Commodore 64 now that's refurbished, and I load games on. I program stupid little things that don't do anything more than just give you epilepsy to watch. Like I'll program it to like flash the colors and like say the words.
I made this.
But I made this.
What
Exactly.
have you done?
Exactly. I made this stupid little animation that says, I love my girlfriend.
And
Crazy.
sometimes that's what it's all about.
That's where it starts.
That's what gives you, your rush, and maybe you'll upgrade to giving it real animations, not just seizure-inducing flashing.
Coding sprites in BASIC is a whole nother. And I know it's relatively easy. I thought I saw a tank just go by. It's just a ladder on a truck.
Oh.
Anyways, all right, Chris, this is where you can plug whatever you want. I know you've got a podcast and other things. Plug away.
I do. I know that you don't talk about politics a whole lot. That's my main podcast. It's The Shouting Match. You can usually find it on Podbean.
Cool.
I figured The Shouting Match was not just a good title, but a commentary on politics, how it is, because it's usually just the loudest man at the shouting match. That's who gets heard. So we're just trying to get our voices a little bit higher. I do it with my friend who's actually in South Korea right now.
Cool.
But yeah, we got it on Podbean. We're trying to get it on the Apple Play Store, Apple, whatever, iTunes. We're trying to get it on iTunes. That's his business. And we have a Reddit page. There's not a whole lot on there right now, but we have a Reddit page. It's just r/the shouting match.
Cool.
And that's probably the easiest way that you could contact us. Tell us that what we're talking about is BS, or you can voice your opinion too. We
that's
like
where you can get in.
interaction.
That's where you can get into a shouting match.
Yeah.
Hey, you said this thing that I don't agree with, and blah blah blah. You know what? People do that kind of stuff on my show. Like,
and I'm perfectly fine with dissenting opinions so long as you're respectful about it. Just because we're talking about politics doesn't mean that you need to punch below the belt.
Right. Exactly. I came to the realization the other day. Like I'll put stuff on YouTube. Like I've said my opinions about the Atari VCS. I might have well said something like super racial or super offensive or something like that. People get so fired up about the Atari VCS. They're like, "Hey, you idiot!" I'm like, "Whoa, pump your brakes there a little bit. We're talking about video games, not denuclearizing North Korea. Chill out."
Any subject you talk about, there's always going to be the one person that takes it way too seriously, and they are the loudest at the shouting match. So people tend to think that's what everyone thinks.
Right. Which it's not. It's just the loudest. It's just the loudest one shouting at the shouting match.
And unfortunately, that's how you get a lot of the negative connotation. But no, you were just voicing your opinion on something that you weren't particularly a fan of.
So you have to have a tough skin, whether you're podcasting or you're a YouTuber or you're on the radio or anything like that. You have to have a tough skin because you're going to stick your neck out, and then people who don't stick their neck out will light you up.
Oh yeah.
You'll be lit up by people who don't stick their neck out. You kind of want to ask these people, well, where's your official, episode about this, or your official stance on this? Where's your platform or whatever? And you're like, oh, I'm just an armchair, just a couch commenter. But that's fine.
Couch commenter,
whatever.
I was used to armchair badass,
armchair warrior, whatever it is. But that's really cool. So it's the shouting match on Podbean and on Reddit. R// or / is it /
I'm pretty sure it's forward, yeah.
The shouting match.
Yeah, if you just search it in Reddit, you'll find it.
Chris Little, this has been a little bit amazing having you on. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Have you on in the future. Good luck with your podcast. Yeah, when my mind goes blank like that, it's because I'm thinking of 100,000 other little nerdy things that I want to say and get into. But this is a long segment, so we're going to wrap it up here. The shouting match on Podbean and on Reddit. Go check it out. Chris Little is my guest. Geeks will be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the shouting match in this break if you're listening to it on the air. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll just keep the link below. You can go subscribe to it and subscribe to this one, Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hamburger. Why not? We'll be back with more Geek Therapy Radio in just a moment. Bees! You get get bees, and you get bees. Well, I'm Johnny Hamburger. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio, your mental curator. Sometimes it doesn't seem like I'm your mental curator, but I am, and I am what I am. Holy crap, what a horrible intro. Sometimes, well, it's no mistake that the bee population, there was a reason why I was saying bees at the beginning of this segment. It's been no surprise that the bee population has been dwindling around the world recently. In recent years, it's actually a big problem. I know a lot of us are afraid of bees, and we think of them as just those flying, buzzing, stinging things. But they actually serve a purpose. Unlike mosquitoes, I have yet to find what purpose a mosquito serves. I have to remind Sarah once in a while that even though I hate cockroaches, as well she hates cockroaches do serve a purpose. They compost and they make fertilizer, and that's how forests grow and plants grow. A cockroach serves no purpose inside of my house, inside of our houses, but in nature, they do serve a point. I do not know what a mosquito's point is. That's the first thing I'm going to ask God. God, what up with mosquitoes? He's probably going to say population control. That's actually probably what it is, population control in general, because you know what the most effective killer in the entire animal kingdom is in the world? You know what has the highest body count every year of kills? The highest kill count. Do you think it's a shark? No. Maybe you've heard that hippos are really mean. It's not hippos. Well, yeah, Johnny, pigs. People don't think about how ornery pigs get. Pigs will tear a man in half. True, but they do not come close to the world's number one killer. The number one killer in the world is mosquitoes. Maybe that's the point that's the point of their existence. Maybe that's why they're alive. Anyways, back to bees and back to dwindling bee numbers. That poses a big problem to certain crops and flowers and vegetation. How can we solve this in 2018 as of recording of this episode of Geek Therapy Radio, segment 3? Drones! It's another use for drones. We can use drones to pollinate flowers. It is not anywhere near as precise and mechanically beautiful, I guess, if you want to say, evolutionarily beautiful as the way a bee does it. A bee goes from flower to flower, and the pollen gets stuck in the bee's fur and whiskers and stuff, and then as it goes to another flower, the male flower, or the female flower, the pollen gets in the female flower, and that's how it works. But drones go about it in a different way. Yes, we are working on it. Yes, there are companies that are working on this. Drones they basically flower bomb. Flour, flower bomb. If you don't know what a flower bomb is, go to Google or YouTube and search flower bomb. People get flower bombed. It's like pieing somebody in the face, except you just throw a whole bunch of flour at them. Basically, what the drones do, that's how they pollinate, is they carpet bomb the entire crop with pollen. And that helps spread the seeds around. That helps grow new plants. I don't want to say it helps spread seeds around. That's not exactly quite how it works. But you get the gist of what I'm saying. This sounds like a really silly segment. But do you get the gist of what I'm saying? That we're using drones now to pick up where the bees are leaving off. Some years are better than other years. Some years have more bees cross-pollinating plants than other years, and that can be affected by any number of things, usually the weather, cold winters and stuff like that. Then the bees don't come back as strong in the spring. Either way, man-made drones picking up the slack. The pollination slack for bees. But you know what? I'd prefer to have the bees. I'd prefer that we didn't need the man-made substitution for bees. I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that drones exist and we can do such things to prolong human existence, prolong plant existence and crop existence, but it's like one of those things. It's like green energy and oil. We're going to be ushered into the future of green energy on the back of oil. We're going to be ushered into the future of hopefully saving the bees on the back of drones. Drones are going to help bridge that gap. We'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. One more segment. I'm going to talk about solar panels because I'm on a solar panel kick. I'm Johnny Hemberger, mental curator. We'll be back in just one moment. Unless you're listening to the podcast, which you should. You should be subscribed to Geek Therapy Radio. If you're listening to the podcast, we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator. I'm on a solar panel kick. I mentioned a couple shows ago, just for a minute, that I was on this solar panel kick, and now that's what happens. I know a lot of geeks can relate to this. We go from one thing to the other thing, and we have these upticks in geekdom about one subject, and then it kind of fades, and we have an uptick in geekdom about another subject, and it kind of fades, whatever. What I'm into right now is solar again. I used to have a pretty nice solar setup back when I lived in a part of town called Montrose. I know every Houstonian listening to this right now knows exactly where Montrose is. You might be listening in Montrose. But for those of you listening elsewhere around the country, around the world, Montrose is like a hipster part of Houston. It's a very old neighborhood, and the neighborhood I lived in was Westmoreland, and it was over 100 years old. Anyways, I had a good solar setup up there. I had solar panels on the roof. I had a 45-watt Harbor Freight setup. Side note about Harbor Freight. Lots of people, usually technicians and handyman and stuff like that, people who make their living working with tools, rip Harbor Freight to shreds. They say, you're going to pay twice for something you could have just bought once if you just bought a higher quality. Don't shop at Harbor Freight. Blah, blah, blah. True. It's not very expensive stuff, and a lot of it's not that high quality. Harbor Freight exists for people who might fix something once in a while around their house. It's not stuff for people who make their living at it. So it's perfectly fine for people to go shop at Harbor Freight and buy something for $10 that would cost $100 in Sears. They're going to get the same longevity out of it. It's going to last just as long because you're only going to use it once a year versus once every single friggin' day. So cut people some slack who shop at Harbor Freight, by the way. Anyways, I have a 45-watt solar panel kit from Harbor Freight. It includes the charge controller and everything you need to get set up, a frame for the solar panels and everything. I think they've got a 100-watt kit now that's on sale sometimes. I'm not going to say how much. This is not a plug for Harbor Freight. I want to get the 100-watt kit. But what I got, 45-watt kit, it's 3 15-watt amorphous solar panels. And I'm on this kick again. I'm in an apartment now, and I don't have access to the roof like I did in the Montrose apartment, but there's this little sliver I've discovered, at least in the summertime here, this sliver of the balcony that gets a few hours of sunlight. Granted, the sun is low on the horizon at this time. I think after 4 p.m. or so to sunset, I have a pretty direct shot from the sun as it sets in the west. So I'm going to set up my panels there. I promised Sarah that I would route the wire, that I would keep everything as hidden as possible, because here's the goal of it. Here's the goal of this setup. And this is really just to give you an idea of how to set up a solar panel at home, what you might want to get out of it. Solar setup at home. I just want to charge my phone every day, want her to charge her phone every day, or tablets every day, maybe our laptops once in a while. Small devices, maybe have a little light or something like that. You're not getting off the grid with 45 watts. You're not getting off the grid with 100 watts. Not for an apartment. Not for a house for sure. But I just want to charge my small devices every day completely off of solar energy. Maybe have a little light, 12-volt light, whatever. So I'm going to have a battery hidden somewhere in the apartment, in the bedroom area, I guess, and just have the cables running around. Hidden, nice. That's the rub. I'm trying to figure out how to do this nicely and aesthetically without drawing too much attention. As I told Sarah, I want you just to charge your phone. I want it to not affect the quality of life at all. I want it for you not to notice any change in the quality of life. Just plug in your phone when you go to bed. and you don't, and it doesn't matter that it's coming off of solar. That's how I want to implement it. And for 45 watts is a system, you can do that. That's going to do it for Geek Therapy Radio this week. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Just search Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hemberger, Hemberger. I'm not associated with the Geek Therapy Network. That's a separate thing of podcast. If you like that, you can subscribe to get to them too. Free plug for them. But I am Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hemberger. Make sure you're subbed to that and you're all good. That's going to do it this week. Thank you for being good to each other. Please do more of that. Be good in the world and be good to yourselves. The world needs more good. So let's be that good. Let's be that good in the world, and I'll see you next week.